Today on the Camera Journal podcast, we are joined by Stan Lai. He's the author of CreativitRy, Asia's iconic playwright reveals the art of creativity. And it says here that he has written one of the most unique works of our time, explaining the mysterious active creativity is actually a traceable function of mind. And there is a path to learn creativity through unlearning many of our habits picked up in life. And he has a map. It's a whole thing. We're going to find out a whole lot more, including some of the plays and things like that. So welcome, Stan, to the Cameron Journal podcast.
Hi, Cameron. So nice to be here.
So, and thank you for getting up at that terrible hour to speak to us. The listener did not know,
It's
but
not too bad.
yes, in our we he's calling. We have him today from Taipei, Taiwan, and that means it's 6:30 in the morning. So,
Right, right.
but I want to dive right in and learn a little bit about you and your plays and things like
hmm
that, and let's
hmm
just kind of get everyone to know a little bit who you are first.
Yeah, well, I've been doing most of my adult career has been in Asia, so I'm rather well known there as a playwright. I've over 40 of my plays have been performed in my own direction all around the Chinese world, and many of them have come to America, but mostly in Chinese, in the Chinese language. It's really interesting. You're in New York, so we would be performing in some theater in New York or Jersey to a packed house of all Chinese people. So I've been doing that like right now at this moment this year. 14 of my plays are performing in different cities around the Chinese world, which includes mainland China, includes Taipei, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. So uh, I keep pretty very very busy. I'm here in Taipei directing my 43rd original play. I started in 1983, so
Hmm.
it's been over 40 years doing creative work. So this book of mine it was published in 2006 in Chinese, and it has sold, believe it or not, over 1 million copies in the Chinese language, and has become sort of a standard book on creativity in Chinese. And I said, everyone says, get it into English, get it in. I said, okay, but it took me 5 years, and it's very interesting because I don't know if it's different. It's different talking to an audience if they know you, right? So the whole
Yes.
book had to be rewritten because nobody knows me in the West. They don't know who I am. Some people do, but most people do not. And so I've had fun rewriting this whole thing, while at the same time doing all sorts of new plays. And also I've founded two big theater festivals in China. One is called the Wuzhen Theater Festival, which is now in it was just finished its 12th year, and the Wuzhen Festival has become the most prominent festival in Asia. And then I've been working in my father's hometown, an impoverished town in southern China called Huichang. So I'm doing this project called the Huichang Theater Village. It's like it's a redoing of the old town, 1,000-year-old town, and then giving the people there uh, a theater group. It's an experiment of mine to see how we can get the young people there. How can they stop going to the factories on the coast and make Nike shoes and Levi's jeans, and is there anything other else in life besides that? So that's what I'm doing. I do all sorts of things. I have my own theater in Shanghai called Theater Above. It's a 700 seat theater in the middle of town, and it's dedicated mostly to my works. But we also do other stuff too. So anyway, if you're in Shanghai, you're in Beijing, or if you're in Taipei, check it out. There's probably some months that I'm performing. My works will be performing in these different cities.
Wow. Excellent. Thank you. Yes, that's and the you've been quite prolific while you were talking. I quickly dashed over to the Wikipedia page. Um, and I was looking at all the lists of the plays, and quite prolific, which is quite impressive, especially as someone who takes 5 years to write a book. I always honor those that can crank it out, sort of, can really put stuff out. Um, all the time. So I'm very impressed by all of that. This is so exciting to be able to talk to someone like this, because I have, in the last several years, um, really gotten into different facets of Chinese media, including like Chinese television. Um,
Mm,
which is
mm.
really entertaining, because they'll introduce a character by just putting their name and relationship on the screen, sort of thing. Which I always find, and I'm like, okay, that's a cultural difference, sort of
That
thing.
saves a lot of time, right?
It does, yeah, it does, it does. Meanwhile, over here in the West, we're kind of like, okay, well, they should greet each other and say their names. Yeah, yeah, that's how we'll do it. The Chinese are kind of like, too long. Just put it on the screen, keep it moving. So it's like, it's so much fun. And that is kind of leaked into my friends. One of my all-time favorite movies, weirdly enough, is a
Hmm.
Chinese film with Gong Li and Chow Yun-fat called Curse the Golden Flower. And
Mm, yes,
um
yes, yes, yes.
yes, which is this one, and
Hmm.
I do a podcast with them, and we've talked about it because I just had them watch it for the very first time. And it's all very large and very impressive, and they really did build that whole palace in the desert to do this movie and all this sort of thing.
Right, right,
Um and
right.
there's lots of, and this is leading to a question. I promise we're gonna get there. Just bear with me a little bit. We're coming to it. Um, is
No
one of the
worries.
things in storytelling that I find really fascinating, especially as I kind of explain how storytelling in Chinese works to like my
Hmm.
friends. Like, there's a lot of things you don't realize why they're there until you watch other Chinese media. And as someone who studies story, has an MFA in creative writing, I'm always looking for these elements of like why do they have people staring down hallways unnecessarily? I could cut 20 minutes out of this film. And as I watched more Chinese media, I figured out, oh, that's how they're telling you that someone's overheard. Someone knows what the plot
Mm,
is, and
mm,
that may be
mm,
important later. So remember that face, sort of
mm,
thing.
mm.
And as I spend all this time, explaining, these things, especially things that I've watched multiple times, and I've watched other TV shows and movies, become like, okay, I think I understand how storytelling works, sort of thing. I wanted the place where we're going to land this plane at is as follows. Um, and that is, what do you think is the biggest difference between American playwriting, Tennessee Williams,
Hmm.
Shakespeare,
Hmm.
and Chinese playwriting as influenced by Peking opera, as influenced by street performing, all this type of thing? What's the biggest differences? And is there anything about performing like plays in our country that is really surprising to you?
Okay. Hey, that is a really heavy but really on the dot, on the point
I'm
question.
sorry,
I
it took
love
a
the
long
question.
journey to get to that
No, no,
question
no,
too.
no, no. It's
Lang.
no, because you hit a lot of points, and the first thing I want to say is I'm in a unique sort of perspective because I was born in America, and so
Yeah.
I speak English, and I'm totally bilingual. And it turned out my career was all in Chinese, where there was a moment where it could have gone either way, and it turned out that my career was all in mostly in theater. Although I've there was a moment where I could have been a film. I did two feature films that did actually quite well, won a lot of awards around, and so that therefore I know all the people in the Chinese movie world that you were talking about, cinema. So, the first thing I want to say is, hey, we're all human, and the human experience makes us tell stories basically in the same way, because we
Mm,
all experience, we're all, what life gives us, the challenges that life gives us are the same, the basic ones, the big ones. Okay. Now, if we can talk about all these different experiences, but if you live in China, uh,
mm,
I'm sorry, you do the same thing. You wake up in the morning, and then you're gonna have breakfast, or well, it's up to you whether you have breakfast in the morning or late at night. That's up to you, and it's the same in
mm,
China, you know. And then you have the seasons, you have the day and night, and you have the cycles of growing up and and adulthood and parenthood and the whole thing. It's basically the same. Therefore, stories, I think there's a basic strategy that sticks. And in the West, of course, it's the Hollywood pattern, which is based on the European pattern from the 19th century called the well-made play, which creates this sort of arc in which some sort of thing, some sort of conflict, okay, happens, and then the conflict gets more and more uh, conflicting until there's this big climax at the end, and then you're done. So it's the thing that you've experienced is in many of the innovative Chinese filmmakers, Taiwanese filmmakers, my dear friends like Edward Yang, who passed, and Hou Xiaoxian, who's still with us. Um, they they said, why first, why do you have to have a conflict to have a story?
Mm,
Okay. So that's
yeah.
that's the first thing. Yeah. And the second thing is then with that out of the way,
By
anything
the way, if I
goes.
walked into any creative writing program in this country and said that five professors just died on the floor, but continue.
Well, we have this body of work to prove it, and it's like, you know, and the whole thing, like Hou Xiaoxian, this great master, his films, there's lots of long shots, and then the characters are very very deep in the shot, moving around, and I've been with him on set, and one day I was watching him line up a set, and then the actors are very far, very small in the shot, and I said, hey, why are they so small, and why is this shot so long? It's he just turns the camera on, and they walk around for 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
and he says, hey, I can't do a close up on these guys. You know, they can't
Yeah.
because they can't deliver. You know,
Yeah.
in other words, their acting is not good enough, and so he's been forced into this aesthetic, which actually is divine. Because you can go through his work and lots of others like him who have emulated him actually, and just these long, and then you're not quite sure what's going on, and then even what you're saying, someone looking at the stairway, whatever, he has all these things built in, and what you're saying is, I don't know, maybe it's just a different attention to detail that we have in our environment, whereas we would be saying, looking at a film, let's say by Tarantino, and say, why is the smoke coming out of the chimney? Why do you need that? Oh, it's the same. It's foreshadowing something.
Yeah.
It's still doing something. And it's something that is universal. That's why, uh, in the end, I find all of the big film fans who really are in the know in China, they understand film at a very deep level, and and it's the same in America. The people who really know film, they know, and what we're all doing is they're all going towards something that is beyond the convention, the Hollywood convention of just starting with a conflict, going up the arc and then going to the climax, and then there's people who aren't doing that. And when they're not doing that, they're doing, like, I mean, let's say go back to Tarantino or David Lynch, and they have great followers in Asia, and they understand that you're trying to tell a story in a different way. And of course, why is the standard Hollywood way of doing it the only way to do it? Of course, it's not.
No, and now, I mean, especially like I was thinking when you were talking about the, films with no conflict and everything, I was thinking about another wonderful film that a lot of people don't know and is sometimes hard to share with friends because there's a lot happening but very little said, and that is Wong Kar-wai in the Mood for Love, which blew the doors
Oh,
off this
yes.
country.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
And I love that film because you just sit with it. Like you're not watching it, you're experiencing experiencing it, which I love because that's like how I write. Like I always write like you're standing in the corner watching something happening, but no one knows you're there, sort of thing. There's a temporal anomaly in the corner you're the reader standing in, and sort of thing. So I like it because it's like my work, but it's like you're the way the interaction between the audience as observer works differently in that film, and
Yes. Well,
it's very
I know that
odd.
film intimately. I know all the people involved there. The cinematographer Christopher Doyle was my cinematographer for two of my films, and William Chung, the production designer and editor, also was the costume production designer for my film, The Peach Blossom Land. And
Mm,
I worked with these two guys right as they were starting to work with Wong Kar-wai and developing that really exquisite aesthetic. And Chris and I, we both live in Shanghai now. And we're much in contact. But let me tell you a story because since you're a fan of this film, you know, once I was in Hong Kong and I was speaking with William, the editor and production designer, and William usually, if you know him, he doesn't say much. He's a guy, very very quiet guy. And I said, hey, so you guys shot In the Mood for Love. It's so beautiful. May I ask you a question? He said, yeah. Because I'm sorry, I heard it took you 10 months to make this film, for Wong Kar-wai to make this film. And he said, yeah. I said, what does that mean? That means that, Maggie and Tony and you and Chris are on call for 10 months. And he says, yeah. And I said, how? I mean, what about your contract? I mean, I'm sorry, but a Hollywood director or even me, given this script, I probably could finish it in 2 weeks because it's basically in one location, right? And
yeah.
it's not that complicated.
It's not like
And
anyone
and he
had to
said,
learn their
yeah.
lines because there isn't a whole lot.
Right. They just have to move around in the shot, And
Yeah.
and then I said, okay, all
And
right,
we're lovely
let's say
things, lovely
this.
things. That's-
Yeah, exactly. And I said, let's say, let me draw a line and say this is 10 months. Okay, so on the left is the beginning and the right is the end. Where did most of the final cut, the final material, where did it come from? And he said from the right hand side, the very little, the very end, at the end of the 10 months, that's where all the material came from. And I said, okay, so you guys, Maggie Chung, Tony Leung, you guys are on call for 10 months, working 10 months. It's like you're writing a draft with film, and film stock film, not digital. And you're doing it. In the end, you finally get your final piece. And he said, yeah. So there you go. There is a class on filmmaking. If you have the means, I'm saying, like, wow, more power to you guys, because if you have the means to do that, meaning you have the financial backing and your backers say go for it, which means you're going out on the shoot today knowing you're not going to get anything and you're going to do
yeah.
it for 9 months. Yeah, I mean, wow, wow. I think that's why it's so beautiful. We can be
Yeah.
critical of saying, wow, you're wasting so much. And Wong Kar-wai is known for that, and he's famous for that. But he's also famous for doing exquisite, beautiful work. So what do you say? If you're willing to back that, and if your actors are willing to do that, and your cinematographer, everyone's willing, they know they're going to make a beautiful work of art. Then why not go for it, right?
No, I mean, I think that illustrates, I mean, and bearing in mind that movie came out 26 years ago, but that I think that also illustrates how what happens like in Hollywood now when the accountants are in charge and not the creatives.
You're
Um,
right. Wow, wow, yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's, you don't necessarily, I mean, you look at, especially, I love old Hollywood, big prestige stuff from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And there's a movie about Catherine the Great, and it's in black and white. But I told him, I said, you have to watch this film. I said, every frame is art. I said, all the backgrounds are hand painted. It moves like old theater. I said, this film is just luxurious to watch. We all know the story. She gets
Yes.
Russia, blah 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 blah. But it's like, but this is like the way, like, and we don't have that anymore. They haven't made stuff like that in 50 years at this point. Everything is very stripped down, very CGI. Every moment is tracked,
Yeah.
every cent, every penny, everything. And that type of excess from which beauty can finally emerge. That's not a thing because all your accountants and MBAs will say, that's lovely, but we have quarterly numbers to make, like, sort of thing. And then,
And so what do you have to show for it? You have the numbers to show for it. What else do you have to show for it? Did you leave behind anything great, anything beautiful in the last
yeah,
few years? It's hard. It's really hard to pick something. I'm on, Netflix, whatever, just going, and it's hard to find a film I want to see. It's like, yeah,
no,
it's always a
yeah.
a remake or a sequel of something, you
Yeah,
know.
no, and I was also thinking about the long shots with the small characters. Curse the Golden Flower has so many of those.
Right,
And it
right.
has more though it's as bad as The West Wing when it comes to people walking. Everyone's walking and on the move, usually very quickly, and there's some
Yeah.
poor soul on a little, cart with some tracks, following her down a hallway. Again,
Right, right, right.
fabulous things. The clothing is huge. And that, but there's lots of she's standing at one end of the hallway, the camera's clearly at the other. Sometimes she walks forward, sometimes they just cut forward, which is very kind of interesting stuff. And that, yeah, I
Hmm.
just love the way that film is shot. I think also the other one that also kind of blew the doors off here, not as well, much bigger than Curse the Golden Flower, but was that other one with all the fighting scenes. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that one it was always, especially in the trailer, from the moment people saw the trailer, all these big, luxurious outdoor shots, and the people are so small because they have this big,
Yeah.
wide shot sort of thing. And so, yeah,
Right.
but that's also, I mean,
No,
those
Ang
little
Lee is
things.
totally brilliant. Yeah, he's amazing. He's really
Yeah.
amazing.
But all those little subtle storyline change, not storyline changes, but all those subtle decisions, all those subtle
Hmm.
creativity things are always so fascinating. So looping this whole discussion back around to your book, because that's what you're actually here to
Hmm.
talk about, rather than us geeking
No,
out
oh
about
no,
Chinese cinema for a half hour.
I can talk. I'm happy to talk about anything, Cameron. Yeah. No, no,
um, yeah.
and it's great to talk to someone who knows everything that you know.
Oh, well, thank you very much. But I want to talk a little bit about your book.
Okay.
How are we harnessing our creativity? What is the pathway to get that going? Asking for a friend who's
Okay.
a burnt out full-time artist that also does a podcast. He's terrible.
All
But
right.
how do we get creativity going for him?
All right. Okay. Well, I've been writing plays and directing for and teaching. So I did all these things for over 20 years. And as a teacher, I was always frustrated because I was saying it was like, I can teach you to be if you are creative, I can teach you to be more creative. But where do we go from 0 to 1? How do I get you to be creative? And then I thought when I couldn't do it, I was thinking, well, my teachers didn't do it. It's not part of my job description. So so I'll just go on doing what I do, which is encouraging you to be creative, which is like saying, just, learn it yourself. And, and I think that's true in most conservatories, academic academies, wherever in schools. So anyway, one year I was traveling in India and I had this breakthrough because in the Buddhist scriptures, there's a line that is very important that keeps echoing back to you as if you're a Buddhist student, which is you need two things for progress on the path, which is wisdom and method. And I thought that's so obvious, because you need method for anything to get anything done. But without the wisdom, you're not going to get very far. So I said, well, that applies to creativity too, doesn't it? So if that is true, then there's one half of the equation that we have been neglecting because in our whole education system, we're all about method and there's nothing about wisdom. So I thought about it and I went to the dictionary. And Webster's dictionary says, believe it or not, wisdom is the quality of being wise. So, so
Hmm.
I gave them one chance and cross checked wise. And wise is characterized by wisdom. So you're looping this word that you're not translating, you're not interpreting it. You're going, it's what it is. And I went, wait a minute, something is strange here because if you can't explain to me what wisdom is, how am I going to teach it and how am I going to let people, get into it? So I went to my friend, the head of the philosophy department at National Taiwan University, Professor Ling, and he said, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting because particularly in democracies these days, wisdom is something that is left to the individual. So you have to decide what wisdom is. I said, okay, I get it. I get it now. So it's part of this whole political philosophy, and like, and it has everything to do with this thing called happiness. How do you define your own happiness? And that is your wisdom, basically. So anyway, one day I was talking to the concert pianist Fu Cong, this great Chinese. He passed a few years ago, and his hands were injured, and he was getting acupuncture for them, and that is so painful for a concert pianist to not be able to play. And I was asking him what he was doing, and he said, well, he was spending his time being a juror for the international competitions for the pianists. And I said, so how's that? And he said, my God, we were speaking in Chinese. He said, these young kids, my God, the fingers are so incredible. I said, wow, that's good. And suddenly he turned to me and he spoke in English because he was in living in London for decades. He said, but Stan, he said, where is the music? You know. So that to me was the perfect explanation of method and wisdom. So we teach method, the fingers are the method. So these guys, they're incredible. They can play anything. And then
Mhm.
the wisdom is, so where's the music? The music is the wisdom itself. So if you're playing a lot of notes, I'm sorry, that doesn't equal, without the wisdom, it's just noise, it's just sound. And with the wisdom, then it becomes music. So it's not like you can play Bach and just play Bach and say that you can play Bach. No, you have to have the wisdom of that, which how is the teacher going to give that to you? I don't. I'm a big music fan. Of
Yeah.
classical, jazz. And it's really, when you think about it. I never got the chance to ask Fu Cong that question. How would you teach the wisdom to your students, the wisdom of Chopin, to your students? Because it's sort of has to rub off on them. It's like they have to learn it from you, but how do you find it? Where do you get it? Anyway, so my book is predicated first on this idea that we are missing half, at least half of this in our education. And so we have to find it. The second thing is very important is many people think that creativity and inspiration is only for geniuses, people. So, and they prove it by saying, look, how, when the inspiration comes, it's boom, it comes into you. All right. And I questioned that. I said, what do you mean when you say it comes into you? From where? Where is this inspiration coming from? So the Greeks said the muses, and you always have this divine, it's like, Puccini, he said every note of Madame Butterfly was dictated to him by God, and all he had to do was write it out like a printer, like he's a printer. So what I did was I thought about the inspiration for all of my own plays. And this one play of mine, Karaman, you have to see it someday. It actually, they're doing it at MIT this weekend. It's called A Dream Like a Dream, and it's
Hmm.
8 hours long, and it's very, very
Oh my
complicated. Much
God.
more yeah, it's much more complicated than any of the films we just talked about. And the inspiration for that very complex work came in an instant to me, and so I reviewed all of these inspirations that I'd ever gotten in my life, and I realized that actually, if you slow down that moment of inspiration, real slow, it's like, I mean, it's like if you're watching an NBA game and there's, instant replay to see who last touched the ball out of bounds, and you slow it down to the frame, you can see it's something, some mechanism in you is drawing things out of your own mind and putting them together. It's
Hmm.
not within that frame by frame. There's no divine intervention, at least in me. Okay, I don't see an alien creature or a divine God come into my mind and place this thing in and say, Stan, this is how you do it. No, it's all these are all things like a dream, 8 hours. It goes from two continents, 100 years, 100 characters. I know all those characters. They're coming from somewhere in my vault, somewhere in my storehouse. And 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 I know all the strategies of telling these stories. It's not like somebody suddenly taught me how to tell this story, but the way it's told is totally new. Meaning that I've been combining different ways of telling stories into this way of telling the story. And people find it very, very fascinating because they've never seen it, anything like it. Anyway, A Dream Like a Dream also was done in 2000. Same, I think the same year as In the Mood for Love, and it's still going. I mean, we perform every year, and crazy, believe it or not, 8 hours. It sells out in a few minutes. Every time we announce that we're performing. So come to
That's
Shanghai
impressive.
in January, and you'll see it. You can see it. February
I
this
don't
year.
think I don't think American audiences have the attention span for that. I don't think
Well, they're
like
doing it at MIT, and they're doing the whole 8 hours. So we'll see. No, actually, people.
no.
I was just talking to a friend last night, and he saw the play, and he said when I told him it's really not that long. He said, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he was skeptical in his mind. But when he went and saw it, he said, truly, wow, that was 8 hours. He was at the dinner break. He wanted to go back into the theater as soon as possible. But there's a 2 hour dinner break, so
Mm.
and I said, that's it. Because as directors, we're like magicians, we weave spells. If you know how to weave a spell, then I would say you get your director's driver's license, okay? But and when you weave the spell, when I draw you, the audience, into my spell, then time doesn't exist. There's no such thing as 8 hours or 2 hours. You're in there, and then you stay
Yeah.
there, and then when you come out, I mean, think about it. Any great movie or theater piece or music you're in, when you're in there, you're in there. It doesn't matter. 2 minutes, it's or 2 hours. It's the same. There's
No,
no
no,
real
it's like
time.
being on a great first date. On a good date with somebody, time ceases to have meaning. The same thing is very
Right.
true for great art. I don't know if you find this, but I always love. Well, let me start back with wisdom and everything first. So,
Mm-hmm,
also a musician
mm-hmm.
for a
I
long
saw. I
time.
saw that. Right. Me too.
And I always love that teachers can't impart, you know, a wisdom, a voice, whatever have you. Though, as my friend Alexa still would say, those are the things you have to earn.
Mm.
Very famous flautist. She's from Australia and was teaching in Ohio,
And
and I
you
think
play
is
the
back in
flute, right?
Australia.
You
Correct.
play the
Yes.
flute,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Uh
yeah.
huh.
And then I studied with her briefly when she worked at CU Boulder because I'm originally from Colorado.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
yeah, and it was funny because I played through high school and taught youth orchestra and performed Mozart and all that fun stuff. And then I didn't play for a long time. I was in college
Mm-hmm.
and did this stuff. And then I kind of came back to it later. And and I hadn't taught in a long time. And I used to do conservatory prep for people and all this sort of thing. I hadn't played in a couple years. I came back to it and I was kind of like, oh, it doesn't sound the same. This is the same instrument, been in the box the whole time, survived like five different moves,
It
all this
doesn't
type of thing.
sound the same. I
It
love
did
it. I love it.
not sound the same.
I
And
love it. I
I
love
was
it.
I was really kind of worried about it because I was kind of like, maybe there's something technically wrong. I've got to pop down to the shop. There's something wrong with the instrument, which, all this like hand tooled by Japanese. It's supposed to be the Honda of instruments and not so good. Like,
Mm,
sort of
mm.
thing. You know, and all this sort of thing. And then I realized after all of this that, in fact, it was funny because someone else said, it's like, they're like, Cameron, no, the instrument didn't change. You changed. You were
There you
20
go.
years old the last time you touched that. You're now 25. A lot's
Mm,
happened in
mm,
5 years sort of thing. And it's true. It's been true in music. It's been true in theater because I've produced small theater sort of thing. It's
mm,
true in
mm.
writing. Um, I'm working with someone right now through the Cameron Journal, and we're doing these articles back and forth. And I'm kind of driving him nuts because I keep asking him for something he has to develop himself. You send me a lot of material, but I haven't heard your voice yet. When
Mm,
you read something of mine, it sounds like Cameron Cowan wrote it.
mm,
When I read your work, it sounds like I could have gotten this from ChatGPT. And in an era where we have to compete with
mm,
AI, uniqueness now is
mm.
big points. We have to
Great point.
level up
Great
here,
point.
folks. Like we have to beat the
Yeah.
machines, sort of thing. So grab your
Yes.
sabos.
Yes.
We're going to throw them against the machines. Um, the reality is like that's you're a
Well,
person, you're a human being, you were in the military, all this type of thing. I need to hear that when you're writing about something, you send me a poem or whatever happens coming. Okay, you want to write about class structure at Versailles. I love that idea. What are you trying to say? Why am I
great point.
taking the time to read this? I could be on TikTok, I could be on Instagram, I could be on Facebook, I could, whatever have you.
Okay.
Why should I engage with these words? And I'm driving him nuts because I know what it should be like, but he doesn't
No,
get
but
it
you're
yet.
not driving. You may drive him nuts. You, Cameron, you may be driving him nuts because what you're saying is true, and only what it really when you say the true things, and they really get into you like a knife, you know that can drive someone crazy. It's so true. That's why when you say why, that why is a very important thing in my book because to me the constant asking of the why is the road to wisdom if
Mm,
in life. Okay, because I what I said was I saw it very clearly in my trip in India is that the learning of creativity happens in two different domains. One method happens in what I call art or conservatory or school, wherever you learn your method, your techniques. Wisdom does not happen there. Wisdom has to happen in this domain called life. So when we're in life, what do we do in life? We search for the masters. I don't know. I don't know if they even exist today. They may not you may not be able to find them because they're hidden somewhere because there's so much happening, there's so much information, there's no way to find them. Anyway, there's a way to do it yourself, which is to ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing.
yeah.
And that is if you're honest with yourself. Why am I writing this play? Well, this play I'm writing because I think the audience will benefit from it. Are you sure? So you're doing this totally. This is an altruistic. This is totally unselfish. True. Well, I think I need to get this out of my chest. Okay, what does that mean? Get it out of your chest. Why? Why do you need to get this? Because it's been bothering me. Why has it been bothering you? If you keep asking that why, you start digging deep into yourself. And then after you dig deep into yourself, you realize, oh, this is an experience of mine that I need to get out into the public. And then you would ask yourself, okay, well, if you get it out, is that enough? Why do you need to get it to the public? Why does someone else have to watch this thing, this whatever psychoanalytical thing you're doing? Why does your neighbor have to share with this? Isn't it a very selfish thing? So you start asking those questions, and in the end, you come to a point where, either you say, "All right, I quit," because none of my answers are good.
Yeah.
All of the whys I have are actually quite selfish, and creativity can be a very selfish and ego thing, you know. Or can I transcend that and say, "No, I really have something. I have a gift. I have a gift for you. I have a gift for my audience." If we can get to that point, we're good. And our wisdom keeps growing when we keep asking those whys, in a nutshell.
No. I think that's a very vital thing for anyone, pursuing this. And when you talk about that, yeah, it really does come from life. And I will say, as someone who is getting closer to 40 these days than not, um, when I was in my early 20s, I found that kind of strangely frustrating because I had a lot to say, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot to say, a lot of ideas, all this sort of thing. And I wasn't really wanting to sit around and wait around for the wisdom where you got to go, live life and all this type of thing and blah, blah. Now I kind of, fast forward 15 years, and another graduate degree and having read a lot of stuff and published 2,400 pieces on the Cameron Journal and done 300 and change episodes of this show. And talked to all sorts of different, writers and people and all this sort of thing, and just all of that has happened. I was kind of like, yeah, Fran Lebowitz is right. There's a reason that there's no great writers who are 20. Like, good
Mm.
writing comes with experience and life and living, and when you have that, that's when the good stuff really happens. um
Yeah, I
yeah,
guess there is a reason why you can have, ballet training at a young age and piano and, you can have, special conservatories for, teenagers. But sure,
yeah,
you can do that for writing also, but you know, what is the skill of writing a play? It's not one skill. There's so much involved. And a lot of it has to do with living, living itself is what you're saying. So,
yeah.
if you want to train an actor, how can you can't train a 6-year old in Shakespeare, you can train them in a different way to be a child actor, but you know,
Yeah.
all this stuff, yeah, it takes some living, it takes some life to be able to do that.
And yes, and that it's amazing how it changes. I don't know if this is true for you, but it's true for me. It changes in times in ways that are very subtle that you don't notice till years later. I did a
Mm,
big push to
hmm
upload a bunch of old archival stuff to the Cameron Journal a couple years ago. My manager at the
hmm
time thought it was a good idea. And I was still amazed to be kind of like, I remember that person, and he was 18 years old, and this was his very first film review or his very first sit down interview with somebody, all this type of thing. And there's so much that I wanted to fix, and he made me promise to fix nothing and leave it
mm,
as it was, because it's, part of the journey sort of thing.
mm,
Um and and that but there's all, and it's true in music recordings, it's true in all
mm.
sorts of, in all sorts of things. um if there was one thing that you could, no one's going to believe you're 71 years old, by the way, so that's just not gonna,
No,
not that's
thank
just
you,
not going to work.
thank you.
But if you could go,
Time doesn't exist, I tell you.
yes, I mean, if you could go, back to, 1983 and
Mm,
tell yourself one thing, what would
mm.
it be?
Knowing everything or not knowing everything? Just knowing everything that I know now,
Yeah,
I
yeah. If you
guess.
if you
Uh-huh.
if you just kind of popped up in some small cafe on a late rainy evening, and
Mm,
there's you
mm.
today and you in '83, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, I guess I would tell myself that really latch onto the real essential things, uh, which I think I have over the years. I don't think I'd give myself too much strange advice, but I think I would do this. Cameron, this is a little radical for me, but I would tell myself, I would say, you have two paths. One, you can be a very successful uh, theater director and playwright, the most successful. You can do that, or you can have a path of spiritual uh, nurturing. You can practice and not be creative, and you can also be very great at that. You have to choose. And if I had a chance again, I might choose the second path. Never said that in public, but
No, no,
thanks for bringing
no,
it up. Yeah, and
yeah.
yeah, because if I have no regrets, I'm 71. I do, like I said, you know, I'm good at what I do. I know I'm good at what I do, and that's a knowing, that's a wisdom that comes with time. Uh, and could it have been different? If it different, maybe in one way, let's say if I had a piano when I was a kid, I might have been a musician, all right, a professional musician, hopefully a jazz musician. But then a totally different track would be I might become a monk, okay?
Mm.
And I do think I probably would have been a pretty good one, so that's my regret, I guess. If but then I wouldn't have had my family and everything, and I have beautiful two daughters who have two beautiful families, and so these are things that like I said, I have no regrets. But if that would be another path, yes, I would consider taking that path.
Yeah, I think everybody, especially, people who operate at a very high level, such as yourself, always have, the other option, what else they would have done if this sort of thing hadn't taken off. In all that, though, in that answer, what I admire the most is your confidence, which I have never had. Do you
Hmm.
bottle that for
Hmm.
sale? I'll take a case.
Sure,
Like,
sure. Let's bottle it.
um,
Yeah, a bottle stands confidence,
yes,
yeah.
exactly, exactly. It's just Tsingtao beer. But that's, but
Well, but
yeah,
but
I
Cameron,
admire
it's
that so much.
what it is. It's a knowing. It's like what I write about in my book is I said my big lesson was in my own art is my mentor, a Dutch woman named Shireen Stroker. She showed me basically she showed me what I didn't know. She showed me say, hey, you don't know anything. And that is the start of wisdom. I was studying almost to the point of having a PhD. And then she showed me that, hey, you don't know anything about theater. You're you're gonna be a PhD, but you don't know nothing. And I mean, that really shattered me. But that's the start. If you don't start from what you don't know, how do you get to what you know? You have to know what you don't know. And I realized I didn't know much about actually how to do it, how to make theater. We can talk a lot about theater. I mean, you work in theater also, and music, how do you actually make it? You know, and
Yeah.
there's so much that you have to know because you have to start from what you don't know.
No, and I always laugh the first time I produced theater on my own. It was a play about 9/11, about Flight 93 that crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, rather than run
Mm,
into the Capitol or the White
right.
House. Jury's out on where that plane was going.
Mm,
And
mm.
I had built this real
Oh, really?
cool,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. They
mm,
never
mm,
they never could figure out where exactly the plane was
mm,
going, but it
mm,
was somewhere in
mm,
Washington. And I
mhm,
had built
mhm.
this sort of elaborate sort of nose and like side of plane to make the cockpit kind of work. And I'd spent a lot of hours on it and all this type of thing. And
Wow.
I had
Uh-huh.
it standing there and it was, it kind of was what it was. And we're doing the whole thing and the play's going on. And we get to about the midway point and I get a text from my mom and she's like, Cameron, comma, can you please remove the giant set piece, stage left? It's really distracting. And I texted back and I said,
I love
I
it.
mean, is
I
it
love
really
it.
that bad? And she's kind of like, it's all I'm looking at. I know the story because I was alive for this event, but I've been looking at the whole time. And so I told two of the guys, I said, go put it in the back. Just take it off and go put it in the back. So then the curtain opens stage two and it's gone, sort of thing. And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we never kept
With without
it. Yeah, and that
without
was it.
reference. Yeah.
That was the death of my huge fancy airplane nose and cockpit side door, piece sort of thing. And it was so then the play gets reduced down to
Its
a
essence.
a
Its
beverage
essence.
cart, some seats we had
Ah.
covered in gray cloth that looked vaguely like United Airlines. And that was kind of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it really, it actually, my mom was absolutely right. Her intuition was right. It was distracting because once it was
And
gone, then we could tell a story. And it actually improved the play
right.
immensely, despite the fact how much
So
money we spent on that damn thing. But
and hours, right? And so you
yeah,
didn't text your mom saying, "Mom, you can't use your phone in the theater."
which it was during intermission, but I should have done. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was
But
so, but yeah, yeah,
she was telling you what you didn't know, which is that didn't work.
yeah,
And
and it
what
was.
works and what doesn't work. That's that you my teacher, her greatest thing that she taught me was she told me, she says, you don't know what works and what doesn't work. You see, that's
Yeah.
the whole thing. Yeah. So you
No,
put in
that's
a
I.
cockpit, yeah, it
Yeah,
works or
no,
it
I.
doesn't work. Yeah.
No, and there's tons of moments. moments like that. And I think what, kind of separates the greats from the also rans is the willingness to take that and let it go, sort of thing, in service of the story or whatever have you, to not get too tied to a character, a set piece, whatever have you. And because let's face it, these things eventually start taking on lives of their own. You lose control of
Totally.
them. And then
Totally.
it's often becoming its own thing, And in theater, you're in the
Right.
hands of actors, stage directors, tech people, this army of humans, sort of
Hmm.
thing. Especially you're writing plays with 100 people. Like, all of a sudden, you've got, a Greyhound bus of people here to do your show. And it's in their
Right.
custody, sort of thing, and that, is even I think a magical thing. But I think, that sense of surrendering, I think is so important. And that's one thing
Yeah.
as writers we miss out on. We don't get to know what every individual experience of our work is from people. We get little snippets from feedback or online comments or whatever have you. But, it's very
That is
different
true. That,
than,
that that is true.
peeking
It's
out
very
and
hard to
looking how the audience
gauge
is doing.
what our audience really sees. It's hard. It's hard to gauge that. And these years, as I grow older, I'm more willing to put in uh more difficult stuff. It's like, I don't know. That sounds strange. It's like, what, you're holding back? No, I used to hold back on some things that I thought, because I don't want an audience to feel like they're being preached at, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking about wisdom or something, life choices or whatever. But nowadays I'm doing more and more of that, and I'm sort of feeling how the audience is feeling it, and it is different. I'd like to tell you a short story about the greatest swordsman novelist, Jing Yong.
Hmm.
I don't think the Golden Flower was based on his work, but Crouching Tiger, no, it wasn't. But a lot of them are. And I had lunch. I had a lunch with him one year. I was very fortunate. It was a round table, but I was sitting next to him, and this was around 1990, and he was much older than me. And I said, "Oh, it's such an honor to sit by you. May I ask you a question?" And from my mouth came the stupidest question I could. Once I asked it, I said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "How do you write your novels?" I mean, you asked the great novelist, "How do you write your novels?"
Yeah.
at lunch. And he was so graceful to me. He turned to me and he said, "Well, I first think of the characters, and I take as long as it takes, which can be a year, to think about the characters. And once I've got them all extremely clear in my mind, I put them together, and they know how the story goes. So they take the story. I put them together and they write the story." Basically, is
Yeah.
that's what he told me. And that's what you were saying, is that if you really know all of your characters and you control what the situation is, you put them in there, they know what to do. They know what to say.
No, I think the most magical moment of writing a book is when the characters take over the story, and to some
That's
degree, I
what
become a
he's talking about.
passenger. Yes, a passenger in the own thing. You're like, well, I guess
Yeah.
this is happening now. Sort of thing.
Mm.
And no, it is a extremely magical moment. And I think, I mean, I always, the medium is the message, and I always, and I'm big on, not every story works in every storytelling medium, sort of thing. There are some stories that are great for film that would be terrible as plays, that would be terrible as books. There are books that make great books that would be terrible as plays but make great films, and vice versa, all this sort of thing. um and I also find that across all of these mediums, some of the most magical moments in films are entirely improvised, but it's got to stay
Mm-hmm.
in, because the studio was generous
Mm-hmm.
to us. I've had wonderfully delightful things happen in theater performances. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's one performance, one audience, and magic happens, and it will never happen for the rest of the run. I was doing that same Flight 93 9/11 film, and when we do the plane crash, which is a very dramatic, sound and blackout, and then we immediately go into playing Danny Boy, the audience applauded at one performance, which about made
Mm.
our jaws drop backstage to be kind of like, this is supposed to be very sad. They just erupted in uproarious applause. What? But looking back, it's
No,
like,
no,
no, that was
I
the
would think they
energy
got it.
of the moment.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think
And,
they got it.
ironically, that's what my mom said. She's like, no, I think they
Uh-huh.
understood the show. Like, I think they understood,
And
the whole
it was a
thing.
gesture of appreciation, you know? And how do
Yeah,
you what's your gesture of appreciation if you are an audience in the theater? You clap. You
yeah.
don't shout, you don't say, "Hey, that was great." You can't do that, right?
And what was amazing though is in that whole run, it only happened once. That
Only
particular
once.
audience, it only happened
Hmm.
once. And it was funny
Well,
because we had done the play 4 hour. It was a day. We would do these on the weekends. We'd do a couple performances a day of this. It
mhm.
morning, nothing. They were very sad. People were crying. Kleenex boxes were out, the sort of thing. The
Hmm.
performance after
Hmm.
them, nothing. There was something about that audience in that moment that's live theater. That's why I love live theater though, is you get those
Hmm.
magical moments. Doesn't happen in books, doesn't happen in film, but in live theater you get those amazing magical moments sort of thing.
When did you do this? When did you do this? I'm very curious.
2011.
Not this, so not too long after the event itself.
We did it for the 10-year anniversary. We
I
did a
see.
month of runs for
And
the 10-year
were
anniversary.
people, because, Cameron, this is very personal for me because I wrote a play called Ago, AGO, and
Mhm.
I did it in a workshop at Berkeley in 2019 before COVID, and it's a 5.5 hour play about this Tibetan group of Tibetans who experience an earthquake, a devastation in their homeland, in Act One. In Act Two, they all emigrate to New York, and at the end
Mhm.
of Act Two, they're all in or around the World Trade Center on the day of 9/11, and 9/11 happens in my play. It happens in
Yeah.
my play, while the main character is serving takeout noodles in one office building, and she's trapped in there. Her daughter dies. A lot of people are around. The main characters are all near close by.
Mhm.
When we did it in Berkeley, and we did it in a very stripped down version because it was a workshop production. We later did a lavish production in Shanghai, but in Berkeley, when that happened, all we did was the actors all started stamping on the ground as we did some simple lights, and then the actors are moving around the audience, and the audience. My feedback was it was very hard for them to take.
Yeah.
It was like too close. It was too close to them. And if you did that in 2011, I was saying, wow, maybe a Go then will never make it to America because it's too close to people. What do you say to that?
You know, yeah, I think it is. So that play had a lot of issues. In one summer,
Mm.
I went through two complete cast turnovers because people couldn't do it. I started it
Ah,
in April, and by
ah.
July almost everyone had left the show, and I was literally actively trying to fill in people. And after it was done, I would go to a dinner at someone's house, whatever have you. Word had gotten around town that I'd done this, and people would be kind of like, oh my, especially in community theater, they'd be like, oh my God, I heard about that show. It was so amazing. I could never act in that show. I could never handle it emotionally, sort of thing. And I'm like, well, fun fact, 35 people couldn't either, and we weren't through 75 casts in the course of doing the show. I had to pull in one of my film friends and give him a short course in how to be a live theater actor because I was so desperate at the end. I said, the audience is the camera.
Mm,
Don't turn your back to
mm.
them. We'll figure it out.
Well,
And he was great,
but
actually, but it was good.
my
It was
actually
fun.
my cast was fine with it. It was the audience. My cast was okay. It
No,
was
the
the audience
audience.
that felt,
My aunt
yeah.
refused to see the show as much as she loves me because she couldn't handle it
Okay.
emotionally. We
So
had
there
Kleenexes out. I mean, it's a very heavy. So I wouldn't be
well,
surprised if
it
people are
was. What I'm
not
saying
jumping
is
to do
in
that
a
show.
go at
But
Berkeley,
yeah.
and my show at Berkeley was very powerful. But what people were telling me was sort of, wow, this is maybe too powerful. You know,
Yeah.
could that be? Yeah.
I mean, I think so. I mean, it would probably, I mean, let's put it this way. If you were getting that response on the West Coast,
Hmm.
that's kind of your sign. Because if you try to do that here, sort of
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I think people would go, but they'd have a really hard time with it. I mean, there are people who, are still alive to escape that day. You've had, like Pete
Right, right,
Davidson,
right.
his father died on that. He's famous for his father dying on 9/11, sort of thing. Um, yeah, I mean, it is a lot.
Mm.
That tragedy is still
Mm.
very much
Well, of course,
with
my whole
us and
play is that's just
present,
a small
and
part of my play. Yeah. So,
yeah,
but I'm am sensitive, to I was because we do it in China, and there's no problem at all. People are gripped by that scene, but not overwhelmingly. It's like okay, they get it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I think it's a very especially for those of us that were old enough to be alive when it happened, I think it's still a lot. And for a lot of us, the world has never been the same.
sure,
The world
for
of the
sure.
10th of
That's true.
September is gone forever. And,
Right.
and I was 13 when it happened. I was relatively young, but old enough to know,
Mhm.
to understand exactly what was going on. Um, yeah, I think it's just, yeah, I think it's really, actually who I would be interested to watch your show ago, a young audience that wasn't
Hmm.
alive for it, college kids who
Mm,
all
mm, mm,
weren't
mm,
born, they were all born in like 2007,
mm.
who weren't alive for it. They have a different
Well,
relationship to it. I would
I
love to
think
see it from an
so.
audience of college kids, not
I
us
think
old folks
so.
who
I
were
think
alive
so.
for it. Yeah, they would have a different
Yeah.
I think they'd have a
No,
different
all
relationship
the
to the
reactions
work.
were from people who had lived through it, of course. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
get that from any of the students. No.
Ah, yeah. No, see,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
I know because I have lots of young fans and friends. They have a different relationship to that. It's
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
history to them. It's the same relationship I have to Pearl Harbor or
Got it.
the end
Yes.
of Vietnam, which for my mother
Yeah.
is a huge emotional thing. I couldn't be ours,
Hmm.
sort of thing. So because
Hmm.
she was in high school in 1974 when Vietnam ended, sort of thing. Different,
Mm.
you bring something different emotionally to it when you've lived through something versus reading it as history. So I'm not surprised that anyone over 35 is like, "Ooh, this is a lot," and everyone who was born in 2004 is like, we're good," sort of thing. So, well,
No.
thank you, Stan, for
Okay.
coming
Sure.
on the
Sure.
Cameron
All right.
Journal podcast. I want to do all the details though. This has been so much fun and amazing to talk to you and spend this time together and talking about books and music and art. And this is one of the days when I absolutely love my job. To get to do this with you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
why
you.
don't you
Thank you.
let us know
Uh,
where we can keep track of you online? And where
uh-huh.
we can find the book and keep track of all your comings
Sure.
and goings.
Yeah, well, the book is on Amazon. Stan Lai, you just find a CreativitRy, spelled with a Try at the end, rhymes with chemistry. All right, and
Yes.
sorcery. All right, so that's what I say. And I'm just starting to use Instagram. Instagram, I'm Stan Lai 99. And otherwise, just I think you know, if you're interested, you'll find some stuff about me. A lot of stuff in English, and of course in Chinese, there's mountains of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So,
it's been my pleasure, Cameron.
no,
It's been my
thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming on the Cameron Journal podcast. We really appreciate it. And like I said, this has been amazing. So thank you so much for coming by.
Totally my pleasure.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter. And we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast.